Hey everyone, so we're at the NVIDIA suite now at CES 2019. The first thing we're looking at here is going to be the monitor side of things. This is one of the biggest news items at the Jensen discussion a couple of days ago, and something we've talked about briefly, but NVIDIA is now supporting adaptive sync with non-GSync, as in the module, displays. So the name for this is going to be GSync Compatible, and they're also non-compatible or non-validated monitors, which would be your traditional FreeSync branded or just adaptive sync monitors, as opposed to something with an FPGA in it, like a GSync FPGA. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Gigabyte Z390 Aorus Master motherboard, which comes equipped with one of the more powerful Z390 VRMs for heavier overclocks on the new 9th gen Intel CPUs. The Aorus Master is also one of the few motherboards with a real heatsink this generation, featuring a mix of high surface area fins and looks-oriented cover blocks. Oh, and it's also got updated RGB illumination. Learn more at the link below. So we're going to walk through some of the common questions that we've seen in comment sections online, hopefully answer some of those today. If you have more, post them below, we'll follow up. But I think the first thing we need to go through here is clarifying some of the branding and naming. So adaptive sync is the technology, kind of like you have SMT versus hyperthreading. Hyperthreading is SMT. It's a subclass of the same thing. So adaptive sync is the parent technology. We've talked about this for years now at this point. FreeSync is an AMD branded version of this, and GSync is an NVIDIA physical module that's existed for a while now in panels that you all are likely familiar with. GSync Compatible means that it's an adaptive sync monitor, could be a FreeSync monitor that has been validated in NVIDIA's labs as producing a good experience, which is partly qualitative and partly quantitative. So some of the tests that NVIDIA goes through for a GSync compatible display would be things like visual quality. So can you see any color issues or brightness variation, or in this one over here, we have some footage of it flickering occasionally. Those would be things that obviously don't pass the GSync compatible test. And then the ones that are non-validated, this is an important point that many of you have asked about, can still be used. So even if it's non-validated, you can still enable adaptive sync. You can still use it with your NVIDIA card. Turing or Pascal are the ones that are immediately supported anyway. It's just a matter of, will you see issues? And part of that's going to be down to your hardware, part of it will be down to you. For example, this monitor immediately to my right has some slight flicker, some brightness variation, I suppose. For me, this would be fine, but for other people, probably not. So you can still use it with adaptive sync to answer that question that's been in the comment sections. It's just, if you already own the monitor, you can try it, but probably don't go out and buy a monitor if you don't have one yet that's not GSync compatible if you plan to use the feature. So a lot of work to be done here. But so thus far, 12 have passed. NVIDIA has a list on their website of the monitors that have passed for GSync compatible if you would like to use a monitor with adaptive sync, but not a GSync module with your Turing or your Pascal video card. There's another thing here. So a VRR range or ratio of the VRR range is important for this. In order to pass GSync compatible validation, the range that NVIDIA is looking for is 2.4, and that's just achieved by dividing. So you divide the maximum refresh range or the frame rate by the minimum, and the result should be, or the quotient should be 2.4. The reason for that is, I guess if you kind of, we'll take some numbers that are easy to work with. You have a refresh range of say 40 to 60, and you have a frame rate drop below 40, so you're below your minimum adaptive sync range. You hit maybe 35 or 38 or something like that. So you're at 35, you're out of range. In order to stay within range, you could double. So if you have, let's say, traditionally 60 to 120 or something, you drop down to 50 or 55, you can double, you're at 100 or 110. That's within the range. And so you're not going to drop out of adaptive sync in this scenario. You'll get a repeated frame, or you could have multiple repeated frames depending on the maximum range, which would potentially be perceived as a stutter, but that's better than a tear, depending on who you are. So going back to the other example though, hitting 35, you double, you get to 70 out of 60. So you drop out of adaptive sync, and you're now going to default to either VSync on or off, depending on the settings of the game, the control panel, or whatever you're using. So the theoretical range for that, you'd want a ratio of 2.0 to kind of be a minimum. NVIDIA's at 2.4 for their ratio, just to have some margin to make sure that the experience is is more or less guaranteed as good instead of existing right on the edge of it. AMD as an example, and we're going to check their website and put it on the screen if we can find it. Our understanding is that AMD has a requirement of a 2.5 for their ratio of some of their validation. So it's AMD and NVIDIA are more or less in agreement there, although the testing beyond that differs. And that's why you see some of the issues appear in FreeSync monitors that we've discussed in the past. So that covers the VRR range. Visual qualities looked at, luminance variations looked at. All of these monitors here today are factory reset, except with the instances where factory reset turns off adaptive sync, where it's been enabled. So it shouldn't be anything there if you're going to be a cynic or skeptical about the settings. And I think that covers a lot of this. There is another branding name I should point out, which is GSync Ultimate. So GSync Ultimate, if you see that, what it means is HDR is supported. DisplayPort 1.4a is supported, 1000 nits for all of those displays. And then there are matrix backlights with hundreds of zones, something we showed probably last year as well, if you're curious about what all of that means. So hopefully that answers at least some of the basic questions of what GSync Compatible means, how it's different from FreeSync, how it's different from the physical GSync module. If you have further questions, please post them below and upvote each other for the good ones and not the memes, ideally, so that I can pass them along easily. So thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. As always, go to store.gamersnexus.net to help us out directly, or patreon.com/gamersnexus. I'll see you all next time.